Custody Geographic Restrictions and Mediation, part of the series Mediation Tips by Fran. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by instantmediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis. I'm a lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And I am Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Fran Brochstein, a Texas attorney and mediator.
Okay, ladies, great to have everyone back together again. And this time we're chatting about geographic restrictions and mediation. This is a little bit of a follow-up from our last discussion, which focused more on immigration issues and mediation, and also child relocation and cross-border disputes. This time, we're going to focus more on what happens when parties are battling over whether or not there should be some kind of geographic restriction on the primary residence of a child, or what happens when there is a geographic restriction already in place, but one parent wants it lifted because they want to move somewhere else. Obviously, this can become a very contentious issue. But Fran, let's start off with you and what your experience has been dealing with geographic restrictions. But first, could you give us a little bit of what your definition is on geographic restrictions?
Well, as everyone knows, Texas is a huge state. And so, and I do think Texas is a little is much more conservative than other states in the United States. But basically, geographic restriction is to live close enough together that both parents can participate actively in their children's lives, such as going to their extracurricular activities and seeing them on a regular basis.
Thank you. Natalia?
This is an interesting concept because here where I live, where I practice when I am an attorney and a mediator, we don't use the term geographical restriction. It is understood that it needs to be this way. And only if people really want to have real influence on what is happening, they need to enter into an agreement. And this is where mediation is so useful, so helpful, and say what they want to have, what they want to restrict. And for example, insert precisely that the kid is to live in the neighborhood of Warsaw. Let us imagine like 10 miles away from Warsaw maximum, or naming particular cities, Warsaw and around, where the kid might actually live. So that the visitation scheme, the extracurriculum activities are feasible for both parents.
Fran, could you share a little bit from your experience, like an anecdote or an illustration to kind of set the stage on how geographic restrictions have been implemented?
Well, first, I find that mediation is absolutely the best route for these type of conflicts because the judge does not have that much time. The judge does not know the children or the parents or the family dynamic. And so at mediation, we can delve into these things in much greater depth than any judge has the time or inclination to do so. Judges have to follow the laws of where they are. And at mediation, we have a lot more flexibility. And a lot of it comes down to, is the parent that doesn't have primary custody actively involved in the child's life? If so, just because the other parent remarries or gets a job in another city may not be grounds to disrupt the child's life. Why should the child leave their school, their friends, the life they know to move to some place far away? Also, the child's age would make a big difference. What a 15-year-old wants is probably going to be very important.
And can you guys share a little bit from your experience of the types of restrictions you've put in place? I mean, I'll start. I've seen restrictions be put in place as limited as, say, the size of a school district, okay, to as broad as, let's say, the continental United States, okay, and everything in between. What's been your experience like?
I actually have done zip codes
Wow.
because in Houston, for example, Houston is a huge city. And so it even HISD, Houston Independent School District, that is a huge school district. You could literally be over an hour away in traffic, maybe 2 hours away if it was traffic. So these are things to consider. And if both parents are very active in the child's life, taking the child to the doctor, extracurricular, being involved in schoolwork, having a lot of family close by, lots of family activities, the kids need both parents to be involved. It's a lot of work to be a good parent. And so it is not fair to the child to have their life disrupted just because one parent wants to move on with their life.
And from my perspective, this geographical restriction intersects with really what we've been discussing. So child relocation and child abduction. That means that if there is already this geographical restriction in place, or when it is obvious that one parent wishes to move somewhere really, really far away, they need to sit and discuss it first. But whenever there is a disagreement, I bet there will be the court to decide it. But again, is it really wise? Is it really being a good parent to rely on the court in such a decision? Isn't it really better to come back and sit and discuss what we need to do and how to alleviate the risk of the kid being separated from one parent because of, let us say, temporary assignment to work abroad, or because of other restrictions like those that COVID brought? There are so many things you can discuss. There are so many arrangements you can make in terms of communication, in terms of having electronic visitation schemes. And this is where, before relocating, before moving on with your life and inventing yourself some sort of an exotic place where you want to live and imagining that you can get your kids with you there, think about the other parent. Think about yourself as being a parent separated from those kids. Unfortunately, the kids do limit our own freedoms and wishes as to how we want to live, because being a responsible parent is respecting the other parent's rights, also in terms where we live with the kid, also where we take the kids when we have the visitation schemes.
So, ladies, what are the common issues now that we've settled, uh, the justification reasons for having it, like Fran said, keeping parents, in their kids' lives, right? But what are then the pros and cons and justification issues for needing to lift a restriction? What have you guys seen? Uh, in my experience, I remember this case years ago in Harris County Court where a judge was listening to both sides. Mom wanted to move to a different city because she had got a new job. That's a very common thing that happens. And dad wants the child to stay here locally because he has an extended family who wants to be involved in the child's life. And so the parties could not settle this case. They could not agree. The child was, I don't know, less than 10 years old. But I remember what the judge ordered. The judge specifically decreed that once a child turns 12, then the restriction could be lifted and the mother could go ahead and travel to live somewhere else with a child. And so that was a way of being equitable and trying to find a middle ground. But it's unfortunate the parties had to get to a judge who made the kind of decision for them. And that was the result. They had to live with it. Okay. So what have your experience been when it comes to trying to get a restriction lifted?
Well, if people are going to live really far apart, it's going to complicate the visitation. So the kid may have to fly. That may be a much more expensive cost. And now we can use FaceTime or Skype or whatever to do some electronic communication. And nowadays, most kids, when they get to have double digits, have cell phones. And so they can text and email and that type of thing. But usually the parent that wants to lift the restriction has to give the other parent something to make it palatable. Many times it's reducing child support, eliminating child support, or even paying for the travel, and letting the other parent have big hunks of time, such as instead of 30 days and 45 days in the summer, giving them maybe the whole summer, or I've suggested, and most parents hate it, giving them the entire Christmas break so that they have some quality time together, because they miss all those weekly visits.
When we talk about little kids, the psychological concept of ensuring the proper conditions for the child's upbringing is ensuring that the child has really stable conditions of living. So that would prohibit really long travel. Having the same environment, the same childhood friends, whether I am with the father or with the mother, might be a very, very important factor in the kids' lives. I met a kid whose parents lived far apart within Warsaw. And actually, they were in mediation. And the dad couldn't understand that the kid, with the arrangement they had, part of the week here, part of the week there, the kid couldn't make any real friends in his real life. The kid was going out to the kids and saying, you know what, next time I might see you in 10 days, will you be here? And it was really heartbreaking to hear how the kid was being torn apart, but the fact that the kid wanted to be with the dad, wanted to be with the mom, but the way they shared their duties was detrimental to the kid. So all of that needs to be taken into account as ensuring stable environment, stable conditions to the kid might be really important in the kid's life, and you need to take into account. This is why all these procedures that people just imagine, okay, I'll have better life somewhere, I'll have better work somewhere, they have to be limited to the kid's needs as well. It's not about just you developing, it's about what the kid can get or lose as a result of your personal decision.
Yeah, so let's turn to some possible solutions, okay? Because somebody who might have found this video might be looking for potential ways out of a dilemma that they're in with the other parent. And it's not always that easy to think outside the box. But let's just go through, I guess, some common uh, possible solutions that people might want to think about, so that if and when they do come to mediation with the other parent, they already know a few of the options that are available. The most common one for me is obviously using technology, right? Using videos, using telephone. I can't imagine how issues of geographic restriction were dealt with in the 1960s, for example. I mean, what would you do if a person relocates halfway around the country or around the world with your child? You're probably never going to see them again unless and until you have purchased airline ticket, to go and see them. But these days we have lots of technology, right? What are some technological solutions you guys have thought of, and what other solutions or out of the box ways have you guys approached this?
So
Fran?
maybe Fran or me? Fran, go on.
Well, I mean, it's all over the place. I'll use where mom moves away. I had one dad that flew first, third, and fifth weekends to where the child lived, because it was a small child. He wanted to be involved with the child, and he FaceTimed a couple of times a week. And he had enough money to do that. Many people don't have that kind of money or time. He was self-employed, so he could just take off on Fridays and come back on Mondays. That's an unusual situation. Many times it comes down to money. You have to make it palatable to the other person. You're going to have to give something up. And if you want to move, the further you want to move, and it also is a problem when people move to small towns far away from airports. That's a big difference. I mean, if you're 2 hours away, and that poor child is going to literally take almost a half a day to get to the other city, it's a problem, especially for small children.
What I also see here is that the parents tend to really make their decisions based on what is currently suiting them. So there will be parents who will be saying, I want to have shared custody. I will live close to this person because it is commonly known that this factor, living in close somewhere in the nearest surroundings, will be taken into account as a positive factor in terms of adjudicating custody or contacts. However, those parents who strategically have different let us say currently different goals, they might want to move further so that it is more difficult for the other parent to travel within a reasonable area. You can't, from our perspective here, you can't really ensure any effective measurements for that. People can travel freely within a certain area as long as the kid doesn't change the school. So as long as it is feasible to bring them to the same schooling environment. However, really, all of that is subject to the common sense and the benefit of the kids. And as long as you understand that these are the limitations, you will do proper things. Many parents complain about the electronic visitation. They say that the kid is not able to actually concentrate that much, to focus on the screen. What I encourage them to do is to either find some sort of a game they can do. And I'm not saying a computer game, that can be a physical game. It can be making theater, something that will attract the kid to the screen. On the other hand, people complain that those electronic visitation rights are also, whenever the kid is on the screen or the parent is on the screen, it is controllable by the other parent, right? Everything is seen. There isn't any, I would say, privacy, not to say intimacy, in the contact between the parent that is on the screen with the kid that is living somewhere else. But again, it is subject to wisdom of the parents to adjust it somehow, to make it safe for the kid, to make it attractive. The parent cannot expect that it will be the kid who will be entertaining them. That doesn't work this way. In a way, this visitation scheme will be just like accompanying the kid in the kid's current activity. Sometimes the kid is just playing and the parent is watching or reading a book to the kid. And you need to also understand those sort of things.
Yeah. So, Natalia, a couple things you said. One, parents need to use common sense, right, whenever they're dealing with this kind of issues. But each parent sometimes will say of the other that they lack common sense. And so, again, or another reason why you need a third person who's neutral and objective, who will be able to come in the middle and kind of help out. The other thing is there was a great tip on when you're doing a video conference with a child, you don't just get on video on FaceTime and say, "Hi, how are you doing? Do you want to talk to me?" Look, that never
Or
works.
what have you eaten? This is actually something that is so annoying to the other parent. It's like suggesting that the kid hasn't eaten. Of course, the kid has eaten, and the kid doesn't even remember what it was because it was so unimportant. But the parent is finding himself or herself in a trap, because what can you actually ask the kid about, right? So the
So,
what have you eaten is the question rather to avoid.
yeah, well, no, I have a great solution then for anybody who might be listening or watching. Well, if you're listening, obviously, please go to the YouTube video and watch this. But I'm sharing my screen, and Amazon recently, just this week, made a slew of announcements on some technology. One of the things that caught my eye was this thing called Amazon Glow. It's just been released. It's a video chat gadget with built-in games to keep kids engaged. And I was like, wow, this is going to be huge for parents who have to do geographic restriction based. I'm sorry, what am I saying? Not geographic restriction, but whenever you want to have a video chat with your child. I mean, this thing has a tabletop projector built in. It's video conferencing. You can have grandparents and parents work with the child on their homework. I mean, it is really cool. And so I think this would revolutionize electronic communication with a child. No longer do we have to just tell parents, hey, you need to just get on Zoom or get on FaceTime, stare into the camera and say hi. But now the child can actually have fun in a natural way that they would normally have if they were physically present. So yeah, I love using technology, and I just hope that this thing becomes a really big deal. But again, it's called Amazon Glow. You can just Google it to learn a little bit more. All right, so we are almost out of time. Let me stop sharing my screen here. We are almost out of time, and Natalia, we'd like to. Well, Fran, do you have anything else to add about geographic restrictions before we close out?
Well, Mac, thank you for sharing that. That's obviously something new. Basically, every child is different, and some kids talk, and other kids are not big talkers. And I always ask parents at mediation, well, is your child a talker? And some will say, nah, kid doesn't talk. Well, if that kid doesn't talk, being on anything, the phone, texting, email, FaceTime, the kid is not going to communicate. That's just the kid's personality. So parents need, excuse me, to put their kids first and do what fits that child. And each child is as different as can be. Even same kids from the same family can be as opposite as day and night. So that's my 2 cents for today.
And closing up, thank you for everybody for listening and watching. And I hope that we managed to persuade you and make sure that whenever you think about geographical restriction, you need to think out of the box. Always. There has to be something special you come up with to be attractive to the kid, to be attractive to you as a parent and to the other parent, so that all of you can work together to really limit the disturbance that it can bring on the kid that you live far away from each other, or when you live close to each other. Please respect that and value that as a real value in your kid's life. That will be all from us today. Bye bye.
See you next time.
Bye.